We examine the natural world, we see what it tells about reality, and we draw conclusions. Thank you for your question. Atheist is gone. He's out of here. All right, I'm never sure if you're clapping because you're like, good job, or you're like, I'm glad the atheist is gone. Oh, both. Okay, all right, I'll take that. Okay, so here's something you do. Take a deep breath. I don't believe almost anything I just said in character. Leave the lights on, please, if you don't mind. I don't believe almost anything I just said in character. My answer is not that I just have faith. My answer is I'm a Christian for the only reason I think anybody should be a Christian. There's only one reason why anyone should be a Christian. It's not because your parents are Christians. It's not because of some experience you had. You should only be a Christian if Christianity is actually true.
So, is anyone ready to role play? Actually, I don't think that YouTube, or my family for that matter, would be overly happy with me going down that line of work, but hey, maybe I'd get some more subs, right? So do like and subscribe if you like this video. Today, we are going to see some role playing though, but it's not going to be me. It's going to be a guy by the name of Sean McDowell, and he is a professor of apologetics at Biola University in California. And yes, he is the son of the infamous Josh McDowell. If you don't know who he is, Google it. I knew almost all Christians, especially fundamentalists, know who that is. And apparently his son has taken up the mantle. So what he's doing, he's at a youth group retreat, a weekend retreat, and he is going to role play as an atheist. Why he didn't just have Justin from DZ Debates come in and be a real atheist, I don't know. I think because he has some ulterior motives, which I'll talk about at the end. But I think it's interesting. I'm going to jump in and comment where I think he went wrong as a role-playing atheist and what I would really say. I don't think he does a bad job. I'll give him a C+, I guess. But I'll be interested to see in your comments some of the pushback that you would have given these kids that he's debating with. So let's just get into it.
You see, when these classes go on, my worldview is going to transform from being a Christian Bible teacher to an atheist. I'm going to tell you my story, which is actually the story of a friend of mine for about 5 minutes who's really an atheist. And then I'm going to open it up for whatever questions you might have. And I'm going to do my best to respond as an atheist. And then I'll take off the glasses and we'll debrief what happened. Are you ready for this? Glasses go on, going into atheist mode. Hey, good evening, Impact. Thank you for inviting me as an atheist to speak to your group. This is unusual for me. I get invited to debate Christians, speak on university campuses, but rarely to a Christian event to tell my story and then to take questions. You might find it interesting that I grew up in a Christian home. I went to Sunday school, I went to camps, I went to conferences kind of like this. I would read my Bible, I sang worship songs. I did everything I was told to do to be a good Christian young man. I really believed it. When I was in high school, I was a sophomore, so I think I was 15 years old. I had this friend, and we would debate like sports, we'd debate politics, and we'd debate religion. And one day she asked me some questions about my faith that I'd never really thought of before. My first thought was what my parents told me. My next thought was what my pastor said. My next thought was what the Bible says. Then my next thought was what I would call a game changer. My next thought was, I honestly have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just spouting what people told me to believe.
So far, so good. That's what 99.9% of Christians believed, including myself when I was a Christian.
But what I'm going to do is go watch some YouTube videos, read some books, and figure out what I believe. To make a long story short, I began to realize that there's not a shred of evidence, scientific evidence, that God exists. There's no reason to think that the Bible's true. It's full of far too many errors and contradictions and immoral teachings like slavery and misogyny and genocide to come from a holy God. I'm not even sure Jesus existed. I think Christianity is better explained as being patterned after these dying and rising gods of the ancient Near East. And so I began to realize that the belief I had been told was not true. That I could experience God just as much in Coldplay concert as I could in a worship setting. And so I became an atheist. It was tough at first because a lot of my friends and family were disappointed in me. But over time, it was very liberating to realize I was going to follow truth wherever it led. To make a long story short, I look at it like this. How many from English or history class know the stories of the ancient Greco-Roman gods? Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, you know these stories, right? Okay, good. Most of you do. When the ancient Greeks couldn't explain something like earthquakes, what did they say was the cause? The gods are what? Gods are angry, right? They didn't know why it was raining. What did they say? The gods were sad, or the gods are crying. Good. In other words, they didn't understand how nature actually worked. They didn't understand plate tectonics. So they inserted God as an explanation for something that they lacked. But as science advances, the room for God gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Why are you going on about the Roman gods? On and on about gods, that we never talked about. Of course they had the god of the gaps in Roman society, Greek society. How about the God of the Bible? We also see God of the gaps in the God of the Bible. Let's say when we didn't know what rainbows were. Human beings would see rainbows. Oh, let's make up a story about that. That's because God put rainbows on the earth because he's promising that he'll never flood the earth again. But we know now what rainbows are. So even though you kind of tell children that story, most adults don't actually believe that. That's called God of the gaps. And the God of the Bible is a God of the gaps, just like the Roman gods were.
How do you think we got here to learn about science and everything that we believe through science?
It's really easy, and there's one word that explains it: evolution.
Okay. So
that's how we got here. Now, this guy says it's funny, so let me raise hand. How many of you don't believe in evolution? Let me see your hands. Put them up if you don't believe in evolution. Okay, put your hands down. And I'm going to call on you, so only put your hand up if this is true for you. How many of you can define what evolution actually is? Put your hand up if you can give me a definition of it. Put it up. Okay, wait a minute. So basically, all of you raise your hand saying you don't believe in it, but when I ask for a definition, about 8 of you can define it.
Now, I understand these are high school kids, but isn't it absolutely frightening that in 2025 in America, we have kids, very few of them in a large audience, that can't even define what it is. What a failure of our school system. How tragic and sad is that? Now, of course, I don't trust McDowell to actually give them the proper definition of what evolution is. Not at all.
Do you at least understand why I think that's ridiculous? But if I asked you what you think about the Bible, you said it's false, and I said, well, have you read it? You said, I don't have to read it. I know it's false. What would you say? At least read it, right? See, that's the way I was when I was a Christian. I was told evolution is bad, so I just rejected it. And I thought, I need to understand it first. I'm going to look at the evidence for it and began to realize that the evidence for evolution is overwhelming. You look satisfied. Question over here. Go. And then find the next person. Go.
What do you believe will happen when you die if you do not believe in a Lord with a heaven?
So that's a good question. How many of you believe that you have a soul? Let me see your hands. How many believe you have a soul? Okay. So presumably, when your body stops functioning, your soul continues and goes to heaven. Is that fair? I want to make sure I represent your views. Seem to be saying yes. There's not a shred of evidence for the existence of the soul. None. There's no evidence that you are anything but your body and your brain. There's no proof for the soul. How do I know this? Well, look, think about it. People would say things like your body has bones and blood, and your soul is where your personality is, right? But you notice something really interesting. When people get brain damage, what sometimes happens to their personality? It changes their personality because it's seated in the brain. So if there's no evidence for any soul, there's nothing that can survive the death of the body. I think when your body stops functioning, that's it.
Actually, no. When I was a Christian, I didn't think my personality was my soul. I knew it was in my brain. I've never really heard anyone say that, so I don't know what he's going on about.
So, with how precise and complex the human anatomy is and how specific the surroundings of us have to be for us to exist, how can you explain the chances of the universe being tuned perfectly at random without any design?
Well, I don't think it is tuned perfectly at random for any design, without design. That's not what I said. Do you want to know what I believe, or do you want to assume what I believe and then shoot down a straw man?
I mean, for us to just be able to live. Like, how complex, not even just human anatomy, but every other being that lives.
Okay, so that's fair. Yes, we're complex, but complex doesn't equal design. That's where you and I are going to differ. In fact, I would point to a lot of things in the human body that no intelligent designer would remotely make. Things like your breathing mechanism where you eat. So every year when people are eating, thousands of people choke to death and die. What kind of stupid design is that? What I wouldn't design is an appendix in the body that has no function. And then what happens? It bursts, and now we can mostly take care of it. But for years throughout world history, you'd have probably hundreds of thousands of people dying every year from busted appendixes. The universe is not perfectly designed. Most places people can't live. So I just don't even accept the premise that things are so perfectly designed, whether it's the human body, whether it's the eye, or the universe itself. Therefore, I find no reason to conclude there has to be a designer.
How do you know that what you believe is true? What do you base your truth off of?
Evidence.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. So here's the difference between what I believe now and what I used to believe as a Christian. What I believed as a Christian was we're supposed to believe things by faith, right? Jesus allegedly says to Thomas, "Blessed are those who haven't seen and yet have faith." So we walk by faith, not by sight. So the Christian worldview says just live by faith. I started saying, I wonder where the scientific evidence points. I wonder where the mathematical evidence points. I wonder where the historical evidence points. And I made a decision I was going to follow the evidence wherever it leads. I began to realize there's not a shred of evidence that Jesus rose from the grave. There's a lot of evidence that evolution is true. There's a lot of evidence that there's a lot of contradictions in the Bible and archaeological problems. This is the kind of stuff that began to turn my faith. Is that what you're looking for, or what?
Can you give me like a specific example of there being a contradiction with the Bible and history?
I can give you a few, sure. I can go through each book of the Bible if you want me to, but let's just start with Genesis, okay? So Genesis 1, you guys know the story. What does God make first? Plants or human beings? What does he make first? Plants on day 3, human beings on day 6. That's Genesis 1, right? Look at Genesis chapter 2. Let me pull this up. Verse 5. When no bush of the field was in the land, and no small plant had yet sprung up. So how many bushes and plants? None. Verse 7, then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. You notice a contradiction here. Genesis 1, plants and then humans. Genesis 2, humans when there's no plants. That's just an example. I don't think you want me to start walking through the rest of the Old Testament. I'll give you one in the New Testament. So, for example, What day did Jesus die on according to the tradition? Friday. What day did he raise on? How many days and nights is that? It's one full day, right? 2 nights. What does Matthew 12 and Matthew 16 tell us? 3 days and 3 nights. It's not 3 days and 3 nights. In fact, the same book of Matthew says on the 3rd day, and it says 3 days and 3 nights. This is a sample of the kind of tension and contradiction I started to find all through the Bible when I just read it carefully.
There are a lot worse contradictions in the Bible, which I'd be curious to know if he ever touches on those. He doesn't in this video, and I wouldn't trust him to do that. But anyway, let's go on.
Go.
If there is no God and we only live for a moment in time, why do we live? Why are we born?
I was born because my parents got together. Are we having that talk right now?
Not exactly.
You
But I'm
did say,
asking
why was I born?
Why do you live? What's the point of living if you know it's going to be over? And for those that are believers, they live for the Lord and for what happens after. Why do you continue leaving if
Okay,
they're-
so if there's not eternity, what's the point in living?
Yeah, like after you're born
So
and all that happens?
I actually think the fact that there's not eternity makes life more valuable. Because what's 75 years of eternity? You take that away, you still have eternity. Right? You cut eternity in half and you still have it. It makes temporal moments actually meaningless in light of the whole. But if this life is all there is, then in a sense, it has infinite value. Every moment counts. Every relationship counts. Every choice counts because this is all you have. So look, think about it this way. How many football players do we have? Any football players? Okay, all right. We have a decent number of football players. So if I said to you, I'm going to line up a game and you're going to play the Texans this year, all right? You're definitely going to lose. Actually, you might beat the Texans this year. No, I'm kidding. There's no chance you're going to win, right? And if I don't care how talented you are, I don't care how good you think you are, you're high school students, you're going to lose to a bunch of NFL players. Now, how many of you football players would still step on the field if you had a chance to compete against NFL players? You're like, shoot, I'm doing it. Right? You still would because you're insane and you like the game. Even though they're going to lose, it's still worth it, right? That's how I look at life. There's food, there's relationships, there's traveling, there's knowledge, there's good things, even if there's not a God.
Almost all atheists get asked this lame question over and over and over. And I think he actually does a pretty good job of answering it, but I would go one step further. I didn't ask to be born. Nobody asked to be born. We just are born and we're dealt the cards that we're dealt with, right? So what are we supposed to do? Once we don't believe in a God, are we just supposed to unalive ourselves because there's no purpose? It's lame. If you are a Christian, please stop asking that question. It's just beyond lame and played out by now.
So how do you live with yourself contradicting what both your parents say and what YouTube says? Because either way, you're listening to somebody.
Okay, so I want you to think about something. Technically, a contradiction is when you affirm and deny the same thing in the same way. That's what a contradiction is. So if I said it's raining and it's not raining, that's a contradiction. If you say plants first and then humans, and then you say humans when there's no plants, contradiction. It's not a contradiction to say I was raised in a certain system, and then I began to read other books, watch other YouTube videos, consider other voices, and then evaluate them, and not listen to them just because they're on YouTube, but follow what makes the most sense and reasonable. There's no contradiction in that.
But no matter what, you're following what someone else says. You're not following what you think because you had to be influenced by that one thing, no matter what.
That doesn't Well, all of us are influenced by other people, of course, right? A lot of our knowledge comes from other people, but that doesn't mean you can't think for yourself. If you read different perspectives and you think about something, you analyze it, you make a choice and follow what you think is true.
Yes, but I think a real atheist would follow it up with, does it make more sense to follow an ancient book written thousands of years ago where they believed that mental illness, physical illness was often caused by demon possession, or follow your doctor's advice, a modern doctor who has modern medicine? What makes more sense? Which person, which thing probably has the better solution? Sorry if you hear any banging going on outside. They decided to come fix my windows today. As soon as I was getting ready to film, I didn't expect them. So if you hear any other weird voices or banging, that's what that is.
Countering back to when you're talking about the evidence of the differences between, when you're talking about in Genesis and then in Matthew. In Matthew, the Jewish calendar is different from now. How it was, like the Jewish calendar, it started at 6. So where do you, would you believe that the Jewish calendar, was a thing? When the time of day started. Because it...
Okay, so let me stop you for a second. I did this for a long time. I thought there's got to be a defense. There's got to be a justification. I came up with these. I tried it. I appreciate what you're doing here. The problem is you still need 3 days and you still need 3 nights. It doesn't matter if the day starts at 6, like you said, or like we do at midnight. There's not enough time from what we call Friday afternoon to Sunday morning when it's still dark. You still don't get 3 days and 3 nights. So good job using your mind, but be careful because you are on the way to become a skeptic. In the back, go.
So, if God isn't true, then how do we know what's right? Like, how do we decide what's okay and what's not?
We look at the effects. We look at history. We ask people. We self-reflect. There's a whole lot of ways to make decisions without pointing to a book written at least 2,000 years ago, full of a whole lot of immoral stuff that we've decided against anyways.
So you said, if we look at history and stuff like that, but in history, it was okay to abandon a baby if you didn't want it. So what makes it not okay now?
It was okay to do what?
Abandon a baby if you didn't want it, like in Roman and Greek culture.
Yeah, I don't think it is okay to do that. Just like I don't think slavery in the Bible is okay. I don't think genocide in the Bible is okay. And I think women can speak in the church. I think the Bible got all of those wrong. So we look and we assess and we make reasonable assessments, whether it's ancient Roman culture or whether it's the Bible, and we move on. That's how we reason morally as a species.
What this poor girl doesn't understand is that the God she worships is no different than the Romans. He throws children out to die. He had 42 of them mauled by a bear. You can read in the Bible where he has thousands upon thousands unalived over and over again. It's outside the scope of this video. Just go ahead and Google it for yourself. And what about poor Abraham? He asked him to sacrifice his son. Now, he didn't do it, but he asked for it, and Abraham just kind of went along with it. And then what about sacrificing his own son in a very brutal way? Tell me that God cares about children more than the Romans did.
Go ahead.
How do you know if the Bible isn't true if there's evidence pointing to that it exists? Like the chariot wheels in the Red Sea.
So the chariot wheels are a complete, absolute, utter hoax. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Ron Wyatt was completely mistaken when it comes to the chariot wheels. And my source, Christian archaeologists such as Joel Kramer and Titus Kennedy. It's a hoax. It's a fraud. Sorry. There's not a shred of evidence for the Exodus anyways, let alone chariot wheels.
As a real atheist, I would also point out that the chariot wheels is one of many hoaxes pulled by Christians. I remember when I was in my fundamentalist church, they told us about Noah's Ark being discovered. And even since I've left the church, they've tried to pull that hoax that Noah's Ark has been discovered over and over and over again. I was shown a film when I was in youth group about how dinosaur footprints and human footprints were found in the same spot, in the same strata layer. This was a Christian film that's since been debunked. It was debunked then, and it's been debunked now. What about the Shroud of Turin, right? Over and over and over again.
Why is murder bad?
Why is murder bad?
Yeah, like, why does life matter?
I'm actually really worried right now if you're asking this question. Why is murder bad?
Because, like, subjectively, there's nothing important about, like, human life.
First off, it feels to me like this is a question that Bible people should answer more than atheists. The Bible is full of judgment, wiping out, and death in the name of God. So it doesn't feel like this is a question that should come to me. What does murder do is it harms somebody. It ends their life. You wouldn't want somebody to murder you, presumably. I wouldn't want somebody to murder me. It's the golden rule, which is not unique to Christianity, by the way.
But, like, why does that matter? Like, why does it matter that you're causing people pain? Why does pain matter? And why does other people matter? And why do you matter?
So I'm getting the impression that any answer I give you, you're going to say, why? Which is fine and good to keep asking. But at some point you stop and just realize it's kind of obvious. You don't need to believe in God, and you don't need to be Christian to know that life matters. This is a universal belief. Buddhists believe that. Hindus believe that. Atheists believe that. Christians believe that. Jews believe that.
But,
We can look around and see certain good things in life, and we don't need an ancient book to tell us that.
But, like, I'm saying, like, why at all does it matter? Like, because, like objectively, it just kind of doesn't. like you just assume that it matters because you want to assume that it matters. But, like, why do you, as someone that doesn't believe in anything, believe that it matters?
So I never said I believe in anything, or I'm not someone who doesn't believe in anything. And you said I want to believe it because I just want to believe it. That's not a fair representation of my view at all.
I mean, like,
If you just look around, look at a child. Why do I need some argument that a child is good and beautiful and that life matters? Why do you need an argument for that? You just look and it's obvious. It can learn, it can grow, it can relate to people. Life in itself is good.
But, like, that doesn't make sense.
I feel like we're not going to go anywhere.
I think even Mr. Role-Playing Fake Atheist was appalled by this. You can tell that he just cut her off. I get this question almost on every video. Like, what's stopping you from, murdering and raping and robbing banks? Like, really? I'm not going to even go into the reasons why, but he cut her off. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised later on in this weekend retreat if he schools her and the rest of the crowd on why that's such a dumb question.
There's more evidence that Jesus lived, died, and came back to life than for just about any other event in ancient history. So, if God did not exist and Jesus' claims to be God were not true, then how would you explain his resurrection?
So first off, I don't think Jesus ever claimed to be God. I don't think there's any good evidence in the Bible that he claimed this. Plus, even if he did, I don't trust the Bible as a reliable source, and I could go into some of those documents, those reasons, if you want me to. Third, the idea of the resurrection is not unique to Christianity. You need to realize this. Osiris, Adonis, Mithras, Horus, these are Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Persian deities that were born of a virgin, had disciples, claimed to be God, rose on the third day. There's nothing unique about the Christian story. So I find no more reason to explain that away than I need to explain away Osiris or Mithras, except that more people just call themselves followers of Jesus.
Yes, he is 100% correct about the virgin birth and the resurrection being nothing new in the ancient world. You can see that story over and over again. But you notice he doesn't push back when this kid says there's more evidence for Jesus than any other ancient historical figure. Not true. Completely false. But yet, this pretend atheist doesn't ever push back on that. Where a real atheist would be like, whoa, wait a minute. Please prove to me that that's true, because it's not true. So this is where the fake atheist, this is where it all falls apart. And it's because he has an ulterior motive.
Do you believe in the Big Bang Theory?
Explain to me what you understand the Big Bang Theory to be, since you asked.
It's like this. So just randomly, it clicked and everything exploded in less than, what was the time? It was a certain time and everything expanded and created. And there's like huge storms and Earth is getting created and everything. It just, like that. It just started. How did that happen?
That is not the Big Bang Theory.
Okay, explain to me though. Explain to me.
So I completely reject that, just for the record.
Explain to me though.
So the reality is, well, without getting sidetracked by Big Bang cosmology, 1 times 10 to the negative 43rd seconds is called Planck time. And at that time, all the laws of physics as we know them break down. We cannot peer back into the moments earlier than then, whether there was possibly some beginning, or whether that's the beginning of our universe and there's actually a megaverse or multiverse behind it. We don't know the answer to that. To assume that we know is to go beyond where the science itself points. That's where I would take issue with it. Besides, God wouldn't answer anything, because you still have to answer, where did God come from?
Our school systems are failing us. That's all I can say. School systems, failing.
What makes you believe more in the Bible, more in science than within the Bible? Because it's also talked about how the earth is going to come to the end and be wiped by fire. But for you as the atheist, you believe that it's the sun. So why do you believe more from the science aspect than the Bible?
Okay, so let me take a step back. One thing that you and I have in common is that life as we know it is going to end. We know it, we believe it's going to end. There's a common ground there between the Bible and between modern science. I would accept that. But why don't I believe the Bible, and why do I believe modern science? For reasons I've given, that the Bible is riddled with errors and contradictions. There's not a shred of positive evidence that it's actually true. And because science has given us things like vaccines and transportation and communication and basically air conditioning and lights and everything around us, science has been able to help us actually understand the world in which we live. So when you go religion and science, it's no competition.
Right, but science hasn't visually proven that the world is coming to an end, but it's been said, and so in the Bible. And then for the first part, for example, like COVID and all the other disasters that's happened, science doesn't improve or have evidence and say in the future this will happen, but the Bible
Okay, so let me stop. That's not what science does. It doesn't matter. Science is not about predicting the future. No scientist predicts the future. That's not the task of a science. We examine the natural world, we see what it tells about reality, and we draw conclusions. Thank you for your question. Atheist is gone. He's out of here. All right, I'm never sure if you're clapping because you're like, good job, or you're like, I'm glad the atheist is gone. Oh, both. Okay, all right, I'll take that. Okay, so here's something you do. Take a deep breath. I don't believe almost anything I just said in character. Leave the lights on, please, if you don't mind. I don't believe almost anything I just said in character. My answer is not that I just have faith. My answer is I'm a Christian for the only reason I think anybody should be a Christian. There's only one reason why anyone should be a Christian. It's not because your parents are Christians. It's not because of some experience you had. You should only be a Christian if Christianity is actually true.
So there you have it. He admits that he doesn't believe hardly anything that he said while he was the fake role-playing atheist. So that means most of the answers that he gave, he doesn't believe himself. You talk about cognitive dissonance. That's Sean McDowell. So let's go on to why I think he's doing this, because I was surprised. I was like, aren't you planting seeds of doubt in these kids? I'm kind of surprised that he's doing this. In the rest of this video, he just goes on basically to tell the kids to be nice, Christian apologists, to be nice because so many of them are mean to atheists. And then he goes on, to try and soothe them over where he talks about some of this stuff. And we're not going to review that. It's boring and it's just completely lame. So let's go on to why I think he did this. Why is he doing this? There's 3 reasons why I think he's doing it. One is he's probably, him and other older Christians are worried that these younger Christians are going to run across this stuff on social media, because they're going to. I didn't have that when I was a Christian, and you probably didn't either. We had to go out of our way. Now it's being force-fed to these Christian children. So I think he wants to get, out ahead of the curve to say, see, this is what you're going to see, but I have an answer for everything. The second reason is I think he's looking to make a little army of staunch little apologists to go out there in the world. I think that's what he's trying to do. That's probably the main reason. And number 3 is money. He goes on this, gets exposure, and he sells tons of his books, gets more YouTube followers, and he will make money off of this. Notoriety, fame, grifting, and off of his father's name, Josh McDowell. Just, whatever. So that's all I have for today. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.